The incredible story of the Vasa. This was a warship that was supposed to be the pride of an entire nation, but instead it became one of history's most famous and most public failures. It's a tale about a masterpiece of engineering that was hiding a deadly secret in its very bones.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? The Vasa wasn't sunk in some epic sea battle, and it wasn't taken down by a crazy storm. Nope, it sank on a perfectly calm, sunny day in its own harbor on its very first trip out. So how in the world does something like that even happen?
To get what happened, you have to picture the scene. It's August 10th, 1628, in Stockholm Harbor. The energy in the air is just electric. This isn't just launching another boat. This is a huge national event.
I mean, just imagine it. You've got thousands of people packed along the shoreline. They're cheering, they're celebrating their country's new pride and joy. And then, within minutes, they're just watching in total shock as it leans over and just vanishes under the water. Talk about a PR nightmare.
So, why was this one ship such a big deal anyway? Well, for that, we need to understand the ambition of 17th century Sweden and its king, a guy named Gustavus Adolphus.
See, back then, Sweden was a major power in Europe, and they were at war. Controlling the Baltic Sea was everything. The Vasa wasn't just another ship, it was a message. It was a projection of military strength, of wealth, and of pure artistic power, all designed to make any enemy think twice.
And this thing was an absolute beast. We're talking 69 meters long. For the 1600s, that's gigantic. It would have been this towering wooden fortress, making everything else in the harbor look like a toy.
And then there was the firepower. It had 64 heavy bronze cannons. That was completely unheard of. They were stacked on two separate, fully armed gun decks. The ship was built to be a truly terrifying weapon.
But here's the crazy part. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a floating masterpiece. It was covered in more than 500 intricate sculptures. We're talking Roman emperors, lions, mythical beasts, all of it painted in these bright, stunning colors. The goal was to be as beautiful as it was deadly.
So you get the picture, right? This ship was the physical embodiment of a whole nation's pride and ambition. Its success was considered totally non-negotiable. And that, right there, that's where the trouble really starts. You see, all that grand royal ambition was on a collision course with the cold, hard, unforgiving laws of physics. At the very heart of this story is a super simple concept: naval stability. Okay, so the easiest way to think about it is like a pendulum that floats. For a ship to be stable, its center of gravity, where its weight is concentrated, has to be really low. That way, if it gets tipped by a wave, the water can just push it right back upright. Simple. And you can see exactly what I mean here. On the left, you've got your stable ship. Low center of gravity, it gets hit by a wave, it rocks a bit, but it always pops back up. Now look at the right. That's an unstable ship. Its center of gravity is way too high, so when it tips, the force of the water actually works against it and pushes it over even more.
So how did the Vasa end up like the ship on the right? Well, the original design called for just one gun deck, but the king, wanting the baddest ship on the seas, demanded they add a second gun deck and pack it with those huge bronze cannons. That single change pushed tons and tons of weight way up high, raising the ship's center of gravity to a really, really dangerous level. And here's the thing, they knew there was a problem. Right before the launch, they did a quick stability test. They had 30 sailors run from one side of the deck to the other, but after only 3 times back and forth, the ship started rocking so violently they had to stop the test immediately. The warning signs were practically screaming at them, but the king was getting impatient for his new toy, and nobody had the guts to tell him no. Which brings us right back to that sunny day, August 10th, 1628. The warnings were ignored, the ship got the green light to sail, and the stage was perfectly set for a disaster. What happened next was just terrifyingly fast. The Vasa sails out, crowds are cheering, cannons are firing in salute. Then, a little gust of wind catches the sails, and the ship leans over, like any ship does. But then, it doesn't come back up. Before anyone can even figure out what's happening, a second gust hits. It pushes the ship over even further, and water starts pouring into the open gun ports on the lower deck. And just like that, the magnificent ship sinks in minutes.
It traveled less than 1 single nautical mile. All that money, all that craftsmanship, all that national pride, gone before it even really left the harbor.
And beyond the huge financial loss and the national embarrassment, we can't forget the real human cost. Around 30 people lost their lives that day in a tragedy that absolutely should have never happened.
But the story doesn't actually end there. In a weird twist of fate, the Vasa's greatest legacy didn't come from its very short life, but from its very, very long slumber.
For 333 years, the Vasa just sat at the bottom of Stockholm Harbor. And because the water there is so cold and dark and low in salt, the ship was amazingly well preserved. It basically became a perfect time capsule from the 17th century.
Then, in 1961, in what has to be one of the most incredible salvage operations ever, engineers managed to lift the entire ship from the seabed almost completely intact. It was amazing. For the first time in over 3 centuries, the world could see this stunning, fatally flawed vessel. Today, the Vasa has its own museum in Stockholm, and let me tell you, it is an unbelievable sight. It's this direct link to the past, but it's more than just a cool old ship. It's a powerful, physical monument to the dangers of arrogance, and a timeless lesson in what happens when human ambition tries to ignore reality.
So what's the ultimate takeaway from this whole story? It's pretty simple, really. You can argue with the king, you might even win, but you can never, ever argue with the laws of physics. That's one fight you are always going to lose.